Is it safe to vote in person? Will the post office lose my ballot? Do I need to buy stamps? Hey, I'm Zoe, and I'm a reporter covering young voters for the Star Tribune. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we do pretty much everything, including voting. Minnesota is one of several states expanding access to voting by mail to keep polling places less crowded on Election Day. But there's a lot of confusion going around about how to cast your ballot from home. Let's clear up some myths and misinformation about voting during a pandemic. Myth number 1. Mail-in voting is less secure than voting absentee. In Minnesota, they're the same thing. Minnesota has actually allowed no-excuse absentee voting since 2014. It began after a bipartisan effort and has largely benefited Republican-leaning rural areas where polling places are further away from homes. Myth number 2. Absentee ballots are less likely to be counted. This won't be the first time election officials have had to count a flood of mail-in votes. In the August primary, 6 out of 10 Minnesotans who voted used an absentee ballot. That meant more than 500,000 people actually voted before Election Day. Officials will count all ballots that arrive within 7 days of the election, as long as they are postmarked by November 3rd. Myth number 3. The post office is removing mailboxes and trying to sabotage the election. It's true that the Postal Service temporarily removed some mail drop boxes during the unrest in the Twin Cities, but they've now been returned. President Trump did say that he wanted to use the Postal Service to suppress votes, but Postmaster General Louis DeJoy committed to Congress that they'd be able to handle a surge in mail-in ballots. It's still a good idea to return your ballot early. Do your part to flatten the ballot curve. Myth number 4. Mailing something is hard. Knowing how many stamps to stick on an envelope is basically a dying art. Fortunately, in Minnesota, your ballot is prepaid. Now that we've cleared that up, let's talk about how to make sure your vote counts in November. Register today. Whether you're planning to vote in person or by mail, election officials will be checking your name against their list of registered voters. Making sure that information is correct now is one of the easiest ways to avoid problems later. You can register on the Minnesota Secretary of State website up to 21 days before the election. You can also register before voting in person at your polling place or at an early voting center. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Vote early. Minnesota residents can actually begin voting 46 days before the election. You can vote in person at your local early voting center or mail in an absentee ballot. So what is an early voting center? Beginning September 18th, you can vote in person at your county's election office. Some cities like Minneapolis also have their own early voting center where residents can cast a ballot. If you'd rather vote from home, you'll have to request an absentee ballot. The simplest way to do that is directly from the Minnesota Secretary of State's website. Fill out a short form and that's it. It's completely free. You could mail in a paper application, but you'll need your own postage. If you're concerned about mailing in your ballot, you can also bring it directly to your local elections office. Still need some extra peace of mind? You can actually track your absentee ballot on the Secretary of State's website. And if you want to change your vote, you can request to cancel your absentee ballot and vote in person. Of course, you can still vote on Election Day. Minnesota has not reduced the number of polling places. 3,000 will be open on Election Day, but some have moved for safety, like those in senior homes and high-rises. Officials say hand sanitizing stations and face masks will be available once you get there. Voters are required to wear masks inside polling places, but won't be barred from voting if they don't. Election officials will record those voters' names in an incident log. Now that you know the how, it's time to decide who to vote for. You can view a sample ballot on the Secretary of State's website so you can see what races and important issues you'll be voting on. If you want to learn more about the races and candidates on your ballot, you can check out the links below for stories by me and other Star Tribune journalists. Thanks for watching. Where do I buy a stamp?